Welcome back to AgriTalk in downtown Kansas City at the American Coalition for Ethanol Conference. The Vice President of Market Development for ACE is Ron Lamberty, and he joins us here on the broadcast. Ron, good to see you again. So many issues. I was just reading an article you have in Ethanol Today magazine. If you can't say something good, there's plenty good to say about ethanol, but it seems like that's not what is getting traction. That's not what's getting reported today. I just jotted down some things. The World Bank admits that biofuels were not the main cause for the spike in commodity prices back a couple years ago. I was thinking we had a report out the other day proving greater efficiency, greater net energy gain from ethanol production, and another report out from Bloomberg New Energy Finance pointing out that world governments last year spent $557 billion to support fossil fuels, 43 to 46 billion for biofuels, but yet the criticism and the attacks are pull the subsidies for ethanol. They ought to be able to make it on their own, and it's time to cut. It's just amazing the constant attacks on ethanol at a time where we're experiencing the worst environmental crisis that we've ever seen from the oil industry.
Yeah, and that's kind of the message I'm trying to get across right now is that we spend a lot of time playing defense on this thing, and we've been talking about how bad oil is. And I don't think anybody doesn't know how bad oil is. And so maybe there's less point to that than we think. But the point is there are a lot of positives about ethanol that are a lot better points than we're not oil. I mean, it's a higher octane fuel. It's an oxygenate that helps reduce pollution. It creates jobs in a country at a time when we don't have a lot of jobs. We've got a lot of jobs that are going away, and yet this is something where we could create more jobs. And I think we need to talk more about what's good about ethanol rather than what's bad about oil. Again, because I think we put people in a position, I don't know if it's of defending oil or of, maybe it's like when there's a black sheep in your family, you don't like the things he did, but you still probably defend him. And I think that's kind of what oil is doing. We need to spend our time talking about the power and cleanliness and all of the good things that ethanol does, rather than focusing on the bad guys.
Let's talk about, as we wait for the EPA decision on whether or not to allow up to 15% ethanol, the E15 issue. There have been calls for, in the interim, why don't we just go to E12? That could easily be done. My question to you before we went on the air was, wouldn't that create some confusion if you go E12 now and then later they come out with E15? How do we address that without causing more confusion in the marketplace?
Well, there's a couple of different E12 things. There's a proposal for a waiver, and then there's another one, a letter that ACE signed along with some other groups last week, I think it was, that talks about allowing E12 under the current rules. As it stands right now, as far as EPA is concerned, E10 and unleaded are just gasoline. This would say that they've got rules in there that talk about oxygenate stacking, which is way too much to go into in a segment on the show, but that basically say you could have more oxygen in the fuel than the 3.5% that is the real limit for E10. And so if we can do that, then we can get to 11.5 and 12 without actually having a waiver. What we're asking is, this is legal right now, isn't it? Kind of is what the thing says. So if that happens, you're talking about, if 12% comes, that's 2.6 billion more gallons of ethanol potential market in an area where the ethanol is already there. It would just be a matter of a marketer doing the math, saying ethanol is a lot less expensive. I'm going to go up to 12%. From a consumer standpoint, all their stuff's been tested with more than 10% ethanol in it anyway, in most cases 15. So it really wouldn't cause any confusion. It's not like it would be marketed as E12.
Now, let me ask you quickly, because the other day we were discussing on the air about, will Congress eliminate or cut tax incentive for ethanol? It's at 45 cents now. There's talk about it going down to 36 cents or possibly going away. You emailed me and said, hey, 36 cents is better than nothing.
Well, right now it's scheduled to expire at the end of this year. What we're looking at is 0 next year. And so if we get 36, that's better than 0, certainly. And then if we go to 11 or 12, then it is going to be a big factor, because then petroleum marketers are going to look at that credit and they're going to say, well, we'd buy this, but maybe the price isn't quite as attractive as it could be. Consumers are saving money because of ethanol, and they're saving money because of that tax credit. And if we can sell more ethanol, they can save more money by using more ethanol and by having that tax credit still in place. So it's not irrelevant. Even if you look at the studies that are out there that have said things about it that have been mischaracterized, the Babcock study says we don't need that thing, but it's assuming rapid integration of things like E15 and E20. So if that's the case, they might be right. Then it might not be as relevant as it is now.
But that's a big assumption.
Oh, it's an assumption we can't assume right now. Yeah.
All right. Ron, thanks a lot. Good to see you again.
Mike, thanks, Mike.
Ron Lamberty, Vice President, Market Development for the American Coalition for Ethanol. We are at the ACE conference here in Kansas City. We mentioned earlier, Kansas Senator Sam Brownback was called back to D.C. for a vote. So we have quite a pinch hitter. We have the president of the National Corn Growers Association, Darren Enan, will join us, and we'll talk about some of the issues and concerning the energy bill that looks like it's going to be put off for a while. We'll talk about that next on AgriTalk.